What's the best, worst Sonic game? Don't act confused, you know exactly what I mean. The Sonic game that you just hate to love. The Sonic game that you can't play without its cavalcade of issues spin dashing in your face at a breakneck speed. But for whatever reason, you can't help but come back every single time. There's a ton for me that fall under that category. Sonic 06, Lost World, hell, even a train wreck like Secret Rings has me looking back on it fondly every now and then. These are all games though with that plethora of problems. It would take a lot more than just a couple tweaks to make those things good. And so, when thinking of the best worst Sonic game, my mind always jumps to one answer. Sonic Advance 3. A game that, in concept, sounds like a slam dunk. Like the coolest and most interesting 2D Sonic game ever. But due to a couple design choices, it's completely fallen to the wayside, being almost entirely forgotten about. Being the third entry in the Advance trilogy, with 1 and 2 generally being considered really good, it's hard not to imagine a Sonic 3 and Knuckles situation, where the third game just completely blows the other two out of the water in terms of scope. Along with prominently advertising a gameplay mechanic which has never been attempted in any other Sonic game, before or after, which is bizarre considering it's the most natural evolution in the formula you could possibly make, which is allowing the player to manually select a pairing between 5 different characters, with each combination giving the player an entirely different moveset depending on their partner. That is genius. The kind of thing you'd only ever expect to see in something like a fan game. But no, Dimps did it all the way back in 2004. A feature like this would be praised in future entries like Mania, but for whatever reason, the mechanic has never even been attempted outside of Advance 3. And the worst part of all this is, the game isn't that good. Okay, to be fair, by not that good, I'm not saying bad, but it is a travesty that one of the most innovative ideas ever conceived for a 2D Sonic game was buried underneath an overall package that is more often than not remembered as the worst of the trilogy. What sucks most is that it almost gets there. It almost reaches that point of being fantastic, of being one of my favorite 2D Sonic games ever. There is so much to like here, but 1 or 2 consistent problems wind up bringing the whole thing down, resulting in a game that I look back on so fondly, a game that when I think about it, I always get the urge to play it. Then I do, and remember why it became a memory. I replay Sonic 1, 2, 3, and Knuckles CD all the goddamn time, multiple times a year. However, despite Advance 3, on paper, sounding like the best one of all, winds up ranking on the lower end of the 2D Sonics. Above Chaotix and Superstars for sure, but not even holding a candle to the classics, or arguably the other Advance games. And again, it sucks so much to say that, as there are so many ideas in here that are executed near flawlessly. I want this to be my favorite, but all the talent and good ideas are almost entirely mitigated, due to other elements that bring the whole package down. So join me as I tell you about this little-known game called Sonic Advance 3, as I explore why it is, definitively, the best worst Sonic game. But first, if I'm gonna be playing all these Sonic games, then I'm gonna need some energy. And that's why I'm glad today's video is sponsored by Factor. This video is sponsored by Factor. Factor makes meeting your nutritional goals easier than ever by delivering fresh, never frozen, dietitian-approved meals right to your doorstep, with a team of gourmet chefs creating meals using only ingredients with integrity to help you feel your best. These things are ready to eat in just 2 minutes, with you getting to choose from a weekly menu of 35 options, including Calorie Smart, Keto, Protein Plus, Vegan, and even more. There's also breakfast options, lunch snacks, and beverages. You'd never have to go to the store again, your fridge can be packed. There's even a premium gourmet option where you can get all this fancy stuff like filet mignon, shrimp, truffle butter. I've never even heard of that, but it sounds good. So with all this and more, why wouldn't you head to Factor75.com? Or click the link below and use code 50SPLASHDASH for 50% off your first order, plus free shipping. Once again, that's code 50SPLASHDASH for 50% off your first order. And thanks Factor for sponsoring this video. So like I said, at this point in time, the Sonic Advance sub-series had been going strong for a couple years. While the mainline series was struggling to find its footing after Sega's jump to third-party software, Dimps had been consistently pumping out some of the most solid releases of the entire franchise. They started with the often overlooked Sonic Pocket Adventure, a game apparently so good IGN had to give it a perfect 10. However, thankfully the team got to move their sights to the much more popular Game Boy Advance. Now more than 4 people can actually have the chance to play their game. And play they did, as Sonic Advance hit the system in 2001 and was a major hit. Not just financially, but critically as well. At a time when Sonic's outings were getting more and more grand in scope with the 3D entries, it was nice to have a smaller project release for those who may have been missing the 2D stuff.
Sonic Advance on GBA, Game Boy Advance. I bought this game because of this review.
Did you like it?
Was it good?
No, it was alright.
Was it Sonic? Yeah, Sonic was alright.
Oh, so this is why Justin Roiland got cancelled. Sonic Advance 2 released the following year, and from the outside looking in, it appeared to be more of the same. However, with a brand new trick system, boost mode, and questionable level design. This ends up being the one that I'd probably find hardest to recommend to someone who has never played a Sonic before. It's one of those games where as a casual it borders on infuriating, but if you take the time to get good at it, I'm sure it's a blast. Not that I want to do that. 2003 saw a bit of a detour for Sonic on GBA, as we got the release of Sonic Battle, a pseudo 3D fighting game with a surprisingly deep story, revolving around this new robot called Emerald. It's got simplistic but fun fighting mechanics that do a good job at making each character stand out, all wrapped around a campaign mode that has some of the worst designed missions I've ever fucking seen. Never have I played a game where so often after completing something I'm immediately told to just do it again. But harder. That's a video for another day, as Sonic Battle still holds that special place in my heart. I must have played each campaign in that thing like 5 times, I was a bored kid. But who cares, as 2004 saw the final Sonic game to come out for GBA. Final, original Sonic game, that is. Sonic Advance 3 was the one I wanted the most growing up. I'd find a Game Boy Advance SP at a car boot sale one day, along with a 2-pack containing the first Advance game along with Sonic Battle, both of which I enjoyed. But all I really wanted to play was that one I had only experienced through YouTube Let's Plays, the one that gives you a different moveset based on which character pairing you create. The possibilities are limitless! Well, okay, they're not, but it still seemed like a lot. And so I eventually decided to buy it off eBay, one of the first things I'd ever purchased from the site as a matter of fact. And even as a kid, while enjoying it, I couldn't shake the feeling that this was nowhere near the masterpiece I had hyped it up to be in my own head. As a matter of fact, I find myself getting annoyed at the game more than anything. Every time I play it, it feels like it just borders on being great. It's always in a state where I finish a level thinking, okay, the next one is where this gets good, only to be disappointed time and time again. Because if anything, I'd argue the game only gets worse as it progresses. That'll probably be controversial, I think by the end of this video, knowing me. I'll have ended up pissing off both sides of the discussion here. For overall not really liking the game, but also not really disliking it either. Which is why the only way I can describe my thoughts is that Sonic Advance 3 is the best worst Sonic game. I want to start off by first discussing why Sonic Advance 3 is the best Sonic game. The many things it does fantastically before going into how its negatives mitigate a lot of them. Starting with the story. I think it's a brilliant idea to have the plot here build off Sonic Battle, in a subtle enough way to where it won't be confusing to anyone who hadn't played that one. But to those who did, it's a cool continuation. Basically, Eggman has attempted to use the power of one of the Chaos Emeralds, accidentally tearing the world apart in the process, with it being Sonic and Tails' job to gather the emeralds and get to him in time, meeting up with Knuckles, Amy, and Cream along the way. Where things get interesting is with Eggman's robotic lackey this time around, as we see that he's decided to use destroyed parts of Emerald after his death in Sonic Battle to build this new killing machine, Gemerald. Real creative naming scheme. You end up having frequent standoffs with him throughout the adventure. That's a really neat idea that builds off the previous entry while still ensuring each game can stand on its own. It's something I wish more of the newer games did, which either act like each previous game didn't happen, or shove so much direct callbacks in your face that they begin to lose any impact and feel like unnecessary fan service. The music is also a highlight. The Game Boy Advance has a very unique sound chip, and so it's very easy to make music for the thing that sounds grating. But the soundtrack for the Advance games only got better and better. There's so many great themes in here. Even a remix of Green Hill that proves when the port of Sonic 1 came around, Sega just didn't give a shit. The graphics too are fantastic. This is one of the most colorful and distinct Sonic games out there. Not only do I have to give it props for opening with a level that isn't just a green field, but all the themes in here stand out. From a green hill at sunset to an underground ocean base, 2 years before 06 attempted the idea, we got this great looking cybernetic world. I particularly love the barcode-ass background it's got. Every stage in this game looks amazing, even if I wish there were a little more done to distinguish each act. Something I was really surprised to see, though, pertained to the final world. Usually Sonic games like going for the Eggman base final level, you know, Scrap-Brian, Death Egg, Eggman Land, Final Egg. A lot of eggs. However, here as the story progresses, we're taken up to Angel Island, where Eggman is attempting to once again steal the Master Emerald. This stage, Chaos Angel, has a fantastic aesthetic. Advance 1 did a similar thing where they leaned much more into the ruins of the island, something 3 and Knuckles really only did around Hidden Palace or Skankshore. In reality, the rest of those zone locales could have been used in Sonic 1 or 2 and nobody would have bat an eye. And so I love the attempt here to really define what Angel Island looks like. Crazy for a handheld spin-off to do. The real meat of Advance 3, however, comes from the team mechanics. With the series' ever-increasing focus on Sonic's friends, I think this was a genius idea. You know, if Sega weren't as confident and opted to instead release handheld ports of their console games, this is how I could have seen them tackling a concept like Sonic Heroes on Game Boy Advance. Them having 20 possible character combinations sounds like a lot, but thankfully it isn't as complicated as it sounds, as generally you really only have 4 moves to consider. The first 2 are specific to your character and what happens when you either press the jump button again while in the air, or if you hit the B button. For example, when you have Cream as your partner as Sonic, then you acquire the homing attack, whereas pressing B with a partner like Knuckles makes your slide attack much more useful. Sometimes you'll also gain an added move for when you press down on the D-pad and hit jump. For example, Sonic can now do a bounce that lets him shoot straight down. These are all superfluous though. You know, you could not even realize you obtained half of these moves and get along just fine, as the main thing you gotta pay attention to are your combos, when you hold in the right trigger and grab your partner in a ball. There are, again, 2 things you can do with this, whichever move you perform coming down to whether or not you let go of the R trigger in the air or on the ground. This will be the exact same no matter the pairing. For example, if you have Sonic as your partner and let go of the trigger, you go into an automatic boost mode. This will not change no matter who you're playing as. The only thing that affects you depending on your partner is what they do to your base moves. You know, holding them will always do the same thing. You know, with Sonic as a partner, Tails will always go into a boost mode, and that's the same with Knuckles, Amy, and Cream. I'll use a non-Sonic example as well to show you just how much your moveset changes depending on the pairing. So if you're playing as Knuckles, each ally will allow you to do the same trigger move they give everyone else. Sonic is a boost mode, Tails throws you up in the air and carries you, both of Amy's also launch you in the air, Cream allows you to transform Cheese into a Chow version of whoever you're playing as and use them to attack enemies, as well as launching you in the air. But if you're playing as Knuckles and simply want to do a function like gliding or punching, then the properties of those moves change with every combo. With Sonic as your partner, you got this 2-punch attack. But instead of gliding, Knuckles instead does this headbutt charge move. He even rolls upon landing so you're not blindsided by enemies. With Tails, this changes to a handy uppercut you can even perform while moving, so you're not stuck dead in your tracks, as well as this super useful glide where Knuckles jumps higher in the air before starting it. This added height was really appreciated in stages like Cybertrack where bottomless pits are aplenty. With Cream, everything stays the same as his base moveset. Well, they're not all different, okay? And finally, with Amy, Knuckles, along with every character, loses the ability to turn into a ball automatically when jumping to match her moves. You now have to press the B button to do it this time around, as well as him getting a fun Knuckles-themed hammer. However, if you choose Amy and okay, you get the point. There's a lot of combinations that you have to get accustomed to. But the changes it makes to your actual moveset is what you gotta pay attention to, as it has the potential to either give you, or take away, some pretty helpful moves. This is all topped off with a great amount of charm coming from each combo, from the few but appreciated unique sprites given on the character select screen, to specific idle animations playing for certain pairings. Like Knuckles doing push-ups as Sonic gets annoyed and tries to get him to move on, or Sonic falling asleep as Amy watches over him. Weird. Since there's no way to get an idea of what moveset is going to help you at any given time, the game becomes all about experimenting with different pairings and seeing what works best. You also have overall types of combinations, making it easy to keep track of. One combo could have a focus on speed, while another could focus on strength or flight, all indicated to you from the top left corner. It's rather handy. If the game ever told you what it meant, this is most exemplified in the boss fights, which can either be extremely fun or a complete nightmare based on who your pairing is. I remember struggling with that final boss so much as a kid. However, here I'm smart enough to recognize that picking Cream as your partner and spamming Cheese is the way to go. And speaking of bosses, I love the idea for the final fight, where after collecting all the Chaos Emeralds, we see Gemerald turn on Eggman and transform into a Ball, where Supersonic 9 needs to use Eggman as a partner. And by partner, I mean using him as a projectile to chuck into things. All this sounds amazing, right? And it is. All of these elements come together so well to create a Sonic experience unlike any other, filled with that 2000s Sonic charm. I love how abstract the character select menu is, really harkens back to the special stages of Sonic 1. There's so many positives here, from the music to the art style to the animation, the clever use of the team-up mechanic that highlights the unique attributes of Sonic's friends. Now here's why it sucks. Even though I like the story in this game, none of it is actually communicated to you. We get a short-ass cutscene at the start showcasing Eggman using the Emerald to cause an explosion. And that's it. I only realized the whole splitting apart the planet thing from looking up the plot on Wikipedia. By the time the final boss comes around and Eggman is at the Emerald Altar, it's like, wait, what, that's what he's been after this whole time? Okay, whatever, I guess that's what manuals were for. This is the least of the game's issues, though. The next being the horrible integration of hub worlds. I personally don't like hub worlds in my 2D Sonics. I find them to not only be a massive pace breaker, but also take you out of the world you're traversing. It ruins the immersion. With Advance 3, I understand and honestly prefer them being here rather than not, but that's only because of the game's horrible method of conveying its mechanics to you. That being, it has no methods. The hub worlds are just too enclosed for my liking, though. In most of them, it's a pretty straight line to each of the 3 acts and boss fight, along with a couple mini-games for extra lives hidden around the place. But the worst thing you can do here is go as fast as possible, as more often than not you end up running or jumping into a level portal that automatically sends you into a stage. Not that it takes up much time or anything, but it's kind of infuriating. It makes me wish there were even just the option of a level select. It makes replaying stages such a chore. They're here for one reason, and it's to give you the chance to play around with whatever combo you choose before committing to a stage. Overall, that makes it worth having here, but I think that fails to recognize the much simpler option here of either displaying the moves to you through pressing a button on the character select, or better yet, allowing the player to access a training room of some sort through the character select, just so they can ensure they've got the pairing they like before selecting it, running back to the hub world, and then checking to see if it was the right one. There's so many quality of life options that simply aren't here, which makes playing the game a chore half the time. For example, why do I have to run all the way back to the start of the hub world to switch characters? That means if I get all the way to Act 3 or the boss fight, and want to switch up my pairing before taking them on, I gotta walk all the way back to the warp ring, making sure not to accidentally jump into any other portals along the way. Jump in the character selector thingy, pick my combo, leave the area to go back to the hub, check if it was the combo I even wanted, and then walk all the way back to the stage portal. It only takes around a minute or two, but those minutes add up, and actively discourages the player from wanting to switch. Half the time, I just couldn't be bothered with it and stuck with whatever pairing I had. Better yet, why can't I have the choice to switch characters after dying? Just give me a quick option to press a button to go back to the select menu, pick a different duo who I feel would help me better in the moment, and then I can continue. Hell, penalize me by making me go back to the start of the stage, I don't care, I just want the choice. Speaking of choice, I wish I had the option to unlock characters while playing as anyone other than Sonic. It's been a good 8 or so years since I played through this game, so I forgot a bit of its structure. I kept progressing further and further and thinking, when do I unlock Amy and Cream? I had gotten Knuckles just fine after beating the final stage, Sunset Hills. He just appears and gets added to your roster, and so naturally, I wanted to play as him for a while, before getting to the final world and realizing I'd never encountered Amy or Cream. What's the deal? Well, one Google search later and I realized I was meant to find them earlier in the story. It just so happens that they only appear after beating 2 specific stages as Sonic. What's the thought process here? This game has all these unique sprites for each pairing, reanimating Teal's flight or Knuckles' glide in different ways depending on the partner, yet they couldn't make a couple cutscene sprites for whoever you were playing as? Again, what I've been talking about so far don't necessarily bring the game down, but it's serious quality of life updates like this that are just flat out missing and end up infuriating me to no end. Something that does bring the game down for me though, the controls. And it comes down to one factor, and that's how awkward it feels to jump in this game. Wouldn't normally be an issue since Sonic games aren't as well known for their precise movements, but the greater focus on platforming here, especially on tiny-ass platforms over bottomless pits, sucks, plain and simple. I always find Sonic's acceleration when jumping to be way too fast, and it always takes so long to start turning in midair that I wind up having to consciously undershoot every single jump to ensure I'm not leaping into a bottomless pit, which is why I generally prefer to play as characters like Tails, Knuckles, or Cream, as each of them have a move I can use to save myself. I just wish the game did a better job at communicating to you when you were enabling a pairing that would remove said move. For example, despite being the only characters in the game who can fly, pairing Tails and Cream removes the flight ability for both of them, being replaced with these crappy-ass glides. The moves in general just aren't conveyed to you very well, which sucks when certain character pairings are unequivocally just worse than others. Like a certain pairing gives Knuckles this really useful feature, a feature which I think should be attached to his core moveset going forward, and that's giving him the ability to do a dash up walls while climbing. It's so obvious and feels great to use. However, he only gets this move with one specific pairing. Take a guess which it is, because honestly, it could be any fucking one of them. It's Amy, by the way. But I don't typically want to pair my character with Amy, as it means I have to remember to take an extra step every time I jump if I don't want to leave myself vulnerable for attack. Knuckles with Sonic sucks too. I lose my ability not only to glide, but to climb walls as well. Like, why would I ever want to play as him here? The first pairing you get, Sonic and Tails, really is the best one, as you can not only get shot in the air to reach higher areas you may have missed, but you can also hold on to him in case you fall down a pit, in which you simply let go of the button and have him fly you back to the level. And it's bothersome because, once again, this is a problem with a very easy fix, one that I'm shocked wasn't attempted. See, over the course of playing the game, you get the chance to experiment, figure out which combos you like, which you don't, and the thought will undoubtedly cross your mind. Damn, if only I could play as a character that features a combination of all these different moves I like. To which I say in response, let me play as Gemerald! I feel like if we're not going to allow the player to access Supersonic in regular levels, then this is just as good of a reward for getting the true ending. Only more fitting when you see said true ending showcases Tails putting Gemerald back together where he winds up being taken in by Cream and Vanilla, a plot point that is surprisingly stuck around to this day. How perfect would that be? Allowing me to customize my own character to play as, which mixes and matches all my favorite abilities. Kinda similar to that character in that one game. Oh, who was it? Oh, I don't know. Oh, Emerald in Sonic Battle? Sega, when you come to your senses and remaster these games, you can have that idea for free. All I ask is that I get named in the credits as Good Ideas Guy. I mean, hey, you'd better be giving the player a good reward for jumping through all the hoops needed to acquire the Chaos Emeralds here. In Advance 1, find the special spring hidden in each act and try it out. Sweet. Sonic Advance 2 immediately went off the deep end, making you find 5 hidden rings within an act, along with finishing that act without losing a life. And then they made you do it with every single character in order to get the good ending. Jesus Christ, what happened here? Thankfully, Advance 3 doesn't have it that bad, but it's more like a streamlined version of 2's method rather than the simpler way of doing it in the first. See, there are 10 hidden Chao in every world. You can take a look at this handy guide off to the left to see what areas you're missing them in. After getting them all, head back into the act to find a hidden key, and then use said key in the hub world to unlock a special spring. It's like 1 step forward, 2 steps back. Not anywhere near as bad as Advance 2, and thankfully this game puts a much greater sense on exploration, but still, 10? Couldn't just be 1 Chao per act? I feel like the only requirement here should have been to find the key if the Chao's being used for a gallery of some kind. Because as is, some of these things are like finding needles in a haystack. Which sucks because these special stages are probably the best of the trilogy, finally fixed that perspective issue from the first one. But if the method of getting here is by having to go through all of that, then I think I'll take the bad ending. Thanks. You know, I think I'd be more inclined to get all the emeralds, though, if the reward for getting them was, I don't know, playable Gemerald! Ultimately, though, the main thing that brings the game down is the level design. In particular, Dimp's obsession with spikes, awkward enemy placement, crusher blocks, and bottomless pits. You know, Chaos Angel sure does look cool, but that third act may just be one of the worst final stages in Sonic history. Slowly moving on a tiny platform as rocks fall from the sky, spikes shoot from the ground, and enemies come at you out of nowhere. Get hit and you're falling off to your death, no thank you. I can't believe the jankiness of Sonic getting crushed by stuff hasn't been fixed by now, as it's been a consistent problem for as far back as Sonic 2. It's way too easy for the game to get you caught on something with either little to no time to react, or you'll get out of the way and it'll crush you anyway because 1 pixel touched the block. I appreciate them giving you more leeway when it comes to flying into a platform as Tails, allowing you to clip through it a bit instead of having him drop you like in the classics, but it's one fixed amongst an ocean of design flaws. Like, when Advance 3 is fun, it's fun, but there's never any telling when one of its little quirks will hit you square in the face. I still commend Dimps for being the only studio ever to try and do such a major shakeup on the classic Sonic formula. It's easily the last time I remember them doing something different with it, and it sucks because the idea itself works. It's everything else that brings it down. Sega recently came out and declared the most recent 2D Sonic game, Sonic Superstars, a disappointment review and sales-wise. Many people saw this and claimed that classic Sonic just wasn't viable anymore. Folks aren't interested. But I don't think that's true. Superstars didn't feel because it was 2D Sonic. It failed because it had no selling point beyond being another 2D classic Sonic, which was already the selling point of Sonic Mania. That kind of thing only works once. Sure, it had 4-player co-op, but it wasn't long before folks began to realize that was only a detriment to its quality. In a lot of ways, Sega seems scared to deviate too much from what people are familiar with. These 2D iterations of the characters have remained stagnant, keeping in fundamental flaws with their design because it's what people are used to. Like, why have they still not implemented a flight cancel for Tails so you don't have to slowly descend every time you fly? Why have they not implemented a faster way for Knuckles to climb walls? And the answer is, plain and simple, because they didn't do that in Sonic 3. But if there's anything the critical and financial success of the Advance series shows us, it's that people are open to trying out and loving 2D Sonic games. They just have to offer something beyond the quality of a game released 30 years ago. Hell, what's stopping them from sorting out the licensing issues with THQ and giving these games a proper remaster? They're the perfect Switch games. All you gotta do is give them widescreen support, and that's already half the level design issues solved. People love 2D Sonic and are willing to support it. Sega just needs to give them a reason to take interest. And if there's one thing I can say about the Advance trilogy, it's that it did just that. Didn't he see Teal's ass though?